This is literally Keir Starmer saying he wants to get rid of Gillick competence, right?
GB, Great British Energy, which is going to be a publicly owned utility, which will...
No, it's not going to be utility, though. It's just going to fund private projects, right? It's just a subsidy fund that he's willing to forego trans people's right to use certain facilities because of the framing of the question from mumsnet. Because he's always lied for power. He is power hungry and always lies.
Thank you both so much for taking time. I know how busy you are, so we're really grateful that you're coming to talk to Mumsnet users and answering their questions.
It's good to do it again. I think this is my third time
lucky, hopefully.
Yeah.
So I'm going to crack on.
Well, you're 100%, Edward, yeah. Herman and Chomsky, absolutely based. Gramsci too.
Because we've had lots of questions from our users. Keir, I want to start with one from user
Michael Parenti.
Eggs and Ham. And she says, you have an image of being a dull and boring politician. But those who know you say you're the opposite. The life and soul of the party, in fact.
This has obviously come from somebody who knows me.
Yeah, I mean, she must have some intel. She must have some intel.
And
she actually put a picture up on the website, which is from the Labour Party website, which showed you in your youth, and you definitely look like one of the cool kids. So what she wants to know is, she actually says she'd love you to win the next general election, but she thinks it's authentic politicians who win these days. And she says, I'd like to see more authenticity from you. Why do you think you are struggling to get the real you across?
Well, look.
Because he's always lied for power. He is power hungry and always lies. He's never ever been truthful. He continues to parrot shit that he doesn't believe in to try and get elected because he doesn't care about anything other than power.
Firstly, I find this whole discussion pretty tedious, to be honest, because most people know that the job of Prime Minister is a pretty serious job. And there aren't many people saying to me, what we need is a bit of a comedian. We actually had a comedian with Boris Johnson. It really didn't go very well. And then we had Liz Truss. I don't think it was a real laugh to crash the economy with that kamikaze budget. So, as I say, the whole thing is a pretty tedious discussion, but I'm not, I think it is a serious business to run the country. And there's a hell of a mess. They're leaving, they've crashed the economy, they're going to leave a complete mess, and people are desperate, I think, for some stability and someone who actually, understands where most people are coming from. I grew up, my dad was a toolmaker, my mum was a nurse. I actually do know what it's like to struggle to pay.
Did you know that Keir Starmer's dad was a toolmaker? Guys. Keir Starmer's dad's a toolmaker. I don't think he mentioned it yet, but in case you weren't aware, Keir Starmer's dad is actually a toolmaker.
Make ends meet and pay your bill. Our phone was cut off when we couldn't afford the bill. I think many people say I'd rather have someone who knows what it's like and is serious about putting it right and taking us forward than someone who's got brilliant one-liners. But I have got a few one-liners.
Well, we might have time at the end for that. We might have time at the end. Okay, well, look, we're talking about the economy, and obviously, as you'd imagine, it's a huge topic on Mumsnet. And user Delia Took a Tumble says, I'm a single working mother. I'm having to tell my children that it's going to be a very cold winter and to get used to wrapping up warm rather than using the heating. I've also told them that I can only afford a very small and cheap Christmas this year. I have not shared with them that
his dad certainly did make a tool my rear end. Excellent pun.
Lose our home. What are you going to do for us?
Well, firstly, it's an awful situation that Delia is in. And we're here in Thurrock, and you may have caught some of the discussion this morning with parents with their children downstairs, many of them mums. Exactly the same story, which is pretty well all of them scared to put the heating on. All of them worried about what they're going to do for Christmas. Many of them saying we're buying extra blankets. And we need to just take a step back. This is 2022, 12 years into a Tory government, and we're even having this discussion. And it breaks my heart because my parents, what kept them going in life?
Labour they're occupying a position to the right of the SNP, and the Scottish people are saying no, we don't want that. No, we want what the SNP are giving this, and quite frankly, Labour deserve the absolute fucking drubbing that they're getting in Scotland. Quite frankly, they really do.
Life was the sense that things were going to get better, that we wouldn't be going backwards. And here we are after 12 broken years going backwards under this government. So in terms of what we do in relation to it, we've got to stabilise the economy. We've got to grow the economy. And the three things I'd want to do in government straight away, stabilise and grow the economy and do it in a way that recognises...
Drive, lift, thank you for the follow. Welcome to No Justice Stream. Hope you're doing well.
It's working people that actually grow the economy. It's not this idea that those at the top do it and somehow it trickles down for everybody else. Fix our public services.
Immediately, it's not. Growing the economy takes time.
Yeah, well, two answers.
But I'm glad he's going with this line now, right? I think that when you talk about growth and you just say, this idea of top-down growth doesn't work. We believe in bottom-up growth. I think that's a good line to be taking. You're saying that working people grow the economy. It's correct. It literally is true. Working people grow the economy because we are the working people who generate the wealth of the civilization, yeah?
in relation to that. I know that, but the trouble we've had for the last 12 years is we've been in crisis management for 12 years. We haven't had anybody that says we've got to fix the medium and long-term problems. So we go round and round in circles. Same with the NHS. Every year a sticking plaster, never an actual plan. But in terms of what we do this year, we've got big discussion downstairs about this. We've got to keep the energy bills frozen, and we've got to make sure that the oil and gas companies who've made massive profits, which they didn't expect to make, pay their fair share for it. Because otherwise, we're sticking it on the never never. And whether it's Delia, whether it's the people downstairs, they will be paying for it in the long run.
Okay. And on that note, user Worky says, what are your thoughts on nationalising utilities such as gas and electric? These companies are making huge profits while everyday families can't afford enough for food. Nationalising would make the bills more affordable and potentially be better for the environment. What do you think about that?
I'm pragmatic about this. I don't.
It would also be better for the exchequer, as a load of those profits are either going to get subsumed by the fact that we're going to be selling at a cost rather than at profit, or they can go back into the exchequer to be able to fund public works projects.
Have an ideological position of saying everything must be nationalised, nothing can be nationalised. Where it makes sense, I think we should do it. That's why I was really.
But where it makes sense. Oh, okay, brilliant. Well, in which case, hopefully, I'm glad, Keir, that you're going to then do it on all of the in elastic markets that we were going to be nationalising under Corbyn, which we did entirely on pragmatic grounds. But you don't believe in pragmatism. You believe in ideology, right? This is an ideological position that you're taking. This idea of being pragmatic but not ideological does not exist. Your ideology is going to inform what you believe is pragmatic, right? That's why this is not what the shit he's saying is complete nonsense.
Pleased that our conference we could launch GB, Great British Energy, which is going to be a publicly owned utility, which will.
No, it's not going to be a utility though. It's just going to fund private projects, right? It's just a subsidy fund.
Drive towards the change to renewables, because renewables are 9 times cheaper than oil and gas, and make sure that the benefits of that come to Britain. British power for the British people, if you like. But so I'm not ideological about it. In relation to the energy companies, Bulb is actually in public ownership, but Bulb hasn't been able to lower the prices for their customers. So I don't think this is quite the silver bullet that people think. But where we can do it, Great British Energy is a fantastic idea for a publicly owned company that, as I say, will drive us towards the place we need to be, which is renewables.
It's just an investment fund. It's not a company. Fucking hell, Keith. Why could you stop lying for once? Just don't lie. Why is that hard? Why is that so hard for you?
We've got cheaper bills, more security. Putin can't put his foot on our throat as he's doing at the moment. Massive new jobs, and actually dealing with the climate crisis. We can do that. Great British Energy will be a publicly owned company under a Labour government.
Okay. So Bridget, childcare, obviously huge topic on Mumsnet. You've made some announcements, but they've been pretty marginal. I think people don't think they're quite going to solve their problems. So Jennifer Barclay says, what are you going to do to fix our broken childcare system? The cost of childcare is crippling for parents, forcing many women out of the workforce. Meanwhile, childcare workers, again, largely women, are not paid at a level that reflects the importance of their work. How will you fix?
Yeah, I mean, creating a modern childcare system would be a really important priority for me as Labour's Education Secretary if we're to win that next election. So we have set out the first step towards that, which is breakfast clubs for every primary school child in England. I think that is an important first step. I do recognise, however, there is still more that needs to be done. I just love all of the shit that they're advocating for. I mean, whilst being fine and good, right, a bunch of things they're advocating for, it's all just Sure Start over again. It's just Sure Start part fucking 9001. They can't fundamentally address the broken structure of the economy. They're just going to continue papering over the cracks, saying, "Oh, we've got this childcare plan. How are we going to change the economy to make sure that this system works for people properly?" Because right across the system, it's broken, it's fragmented, it doesn't provide particularly mothers with the options. The reason why we wouldn't need all this extra childcare coverage if the jobs paid so that we could support households and families of single incomes now. But we can't do that because people have had their wages continuously driven down for 4 bloody decades. If people could still have a 2-parent family where one person could work and the other didn't need to, right? We wouldn't need all this extra childcare stuff. But again, they can't recognise fundamental flaws in the economic structure. All they can do is give us these sticking plaster solutions. I'll check out your pesto wine, mage. They need so they can choose the jobs they want, the hours they want. But I think it has to be around the school day too, and that's what we're considering. So from the end of parental leave to the end of primary school, a modern childcare system that reflects the needs of parents right now. And I heard it, this morning downstairs, speaking to parents here, costs are so high, and it means people are giving up jobs or cutting back, and that isn't right. And it is important that we make sure staff working in childcare in early years and early education are properly supported for the work that they do. And that's why we're going to think very carefully about how we make that change, because we'll need to make sure we've got a brilliant workforce that could deliver any expansion that we might be able to consider around childcare.
Okay, so is the long-term plan to have a state-run early education system like many other European countries?
Well, I'm off to Estonia next week, actually, to look at how other countries are doing some of that, because I don't think we've got all the answers here, and I don't think we've got it right at the moment. We spend an awful lot of money as a country on a system that is still very expensive for parents, that doesn't provide staff working in that vital part of a vital industry, that vital part of our economy, with actually the proper pay and terms and conditions that they deserve. So that's got to be an important part of it too. But this is a real priority for me. I don't think you can
almost certain, Bombolini.
talk about growing your economy
Certainly, sorry.
unless you've got a real plan about how you provide parents with the support that they need around childcare.
Great, thank you. And moving on to the NHS. So colouring indoors says more and more maternity services around the country are being shown to be horrifically failing women and babies. Women with severe disabling endometriosis are being told the pain is in their heads. A woman will typically receive less pain medication for the same condition than a man. And thousands of women are suffering severe injuries with incontinence following childbirth, but are told that it's normal and to get on with it. What will Labour do to tackle these massive inequalities in healthcare provision for women?
I've heard some of these stories, and they're absolutely awful. Women talking through their experience, and it shouldn't be happening. I don't think we should be debating it. It shouldn't be happening, and it needs to change. And of course, we're hugely supportive of the NHS. My wife works in the NHS. My mum worked in the NHS. My sister worked in the NHS. So the NHS runs through me. We do need to reform the NHS. Of course, it needs the money it needs to survive. I often say the NHS is on its knees. It's actually flat on its face, is what anybody working in it says. But we also need to reform as we go forward, particularly in relation to these issues, and that's a matter of urgency, but also in relation to other issues. We've got to go down the path of preventative medicine. We've got to intercept diseases much, much earlier, so they can be treated much, much earlier. So what we would say in relation to the NHS is, Labour created the NHS, we're champions of the NHS. It doesn't mean we're uncritical, and that's very, very important to say. Where there are problems, they've got to be fixed, and these problems have been going on for a very, very long time.
It's fine to say we want to look at a more preventative model for the NHS. In fact, admirable. In fact, exactly what we should be doing. But when you're just saying that, that means we need to, think about all these issues that talking about the problems that are there rather than the solutions, when the solution isn't actually about the model of the NHS. The solution is about the model of fucking society, right? Society is broken, and that's why we're having so many issues with these things, because people can't afford proper food. They can't afford, they've not got the time to be able to look after themselves, and they get ill because of it. Mental health problems are the way that they are because of the economic situation of the country. People keep saying, the problem with mental health is because of all the bloody iPhones. No, it's because people can't afford to fucking live, right? Jesus.
With severe consequences for women.
Do you agree there's an institutional inequality?
Yeah, I think there are these cases are such clear evidence of inequality that it would be, tone deaf not to recognise just how bad the situation is. So that has got to be changed.
I mean, there will almost certainly be a trans question in here somewhere, 255.
But the Tories have run the NHS into the ground, on almost every level. And we're already experiencing a winter crisis, early in the autumn, and things are going to get worse. And, people are really fed up with this failure that's been going on for 12 years. One of the big drivers for a general election, people saying, for heaven's sake, I just want to say now, I don't want to go on with this anymore.
Mm-hmm. Bridget, you won't be surprised to know we've got 8 million users, but they're parents, but a lot of them are teachers. So obviously education is a huge thing. Fripp Enos says the Blanket report seems to be proposing yet another huge change in education. And that work will obviously be passed on to teachers to solve and implement. How will you be expecting teachers to manage this extra workload?
I think, just to be clear, the work that David Blunkett has done for us is a really important piece of work. It will be part of the policy making.
All of the shit is just, let's bring back all of the cadre of new Labour politicians, right? Let's bring back Mandelson, let's bring back Blair, let's bring back Brown, let's bring back fucking David Blunkett. Like, there's no ideas, there's nothing new, there's nothing. They've got nothing, literally nothing. Labour is staring down the barrel of Project Zeus. There's a Wikipedia page for shit life syndrome, which is coined in the UK. True.
That we'll be taking forward, but it's a report to us, not of us, so it doesn't all represent where we would want to get to on every area. I think particularly on the skills side, we've already set out that we would reform apprenticeships, that we bring together the work of government to drive that national mission to reskill and to upskill. We need to see big changes across the workforce. Where it comes to schools, I'm really conscious that schools and staff working in schools have been through an awful lot these last couple of years, but also they're under enormous pressure right now. So any change that we would consider making from government, I think we would have to do very carefully, working and listening to people working in schools, teachers and support staff, because given the fragility that there is right now, the funding pressures, the real pressure that staff are under, I wouldn't want to make that worse by, without taking the care and attention I think you should take from government in making sure that you get it right.
Okay, thank you. And lots of
I love
women...
how nonsensical a load of the answers, non-committal the answers are. Well, we agree that there's a problem, and what's really bad if we make the problem worse. So what we're going to do is not make the problem worse and do things right. That's not a substantive answer to the fucking question, is it?
On Mumsnet are concerned about the issue of sex and gender, particularly women's rights. So here's a question from Saucepan Sarah, and she says, lots of women, including me, have been told that we are bigots because we've repeatedly raised concerns about child safeguarding in the context of gender identity services. But the CAS
Here we fucking go. Let's fucking go. Let's see if I have a look at Keith fail this answer.
Review's interim report showed that we were right to be concerned, particularly with...
No, the CAS review interim report did not show that you're right to be concerned. In fact, quite the opposite. In fact, what it did show was that we need to have more intervention with regards to this, to be able to give people better care. This idea that they were closing down Tavistock because it was somehow failing children because it was being gender affirming is the complete opposite of what the CAS Review interim report said. The CAS Review interim report said, which I read on stream, you can go back and fucking check, right? It literally said that there needs to be better care for people so they have better access, because then the Tavistock was failing because it wasn't providing enough service, and that's why it needs to be taken down and split into regional hubs so that people could get better access to the services that were being provided by Tavistock.
Reference to the lack of evidence around the long-term consequences of puberty blockers. Can I please ask if you've read the report and how you would be guided by its recommendations?
It didn't say to stop using puberty blockers, though. It just said make sure we're doing more research.
Provide better safeguards for children.
No, I don't think we should refer to people in those terms for wanting to have a discussion about what is a very, very sensitive issue. This is about children.
Is that all? Is that the only reason why they're being called bigots? I wonder why, if they're just saying, "Well, I'm worried about the long-term use of puberty blockers. I think that should have some more scientific, rigor looked into it." Is that all that they're saying, though, Mumsnet? Is that really all that they're saying, Saucepan Stacey? Is that really the only thing that's been making people called bigots? Could it be them wanting to take away all our rights, which is now fucking happening, right? Because Rishi Sunak is looking at gutting trans protections from the Equality Act, right? Could it be these people who are trying to ban us from the facilities that we have already used and have been using for 12 years? It's the same people lying on the internet about gender recognition reform, and saying that's going to suddenly change how we use facilities when it literally has nothing to do with our access to facilities whatsoever. Could it be the people who are constantly referring to us as groomers and child molesters and paedophiles, right? Who are saying that we're somehow going to be a threat to people's daughters if we just share a fucking toilet with them? That we just, because of our Y chromosome, that suddenly means we're instinctually going to fucking sexually assault children? Is that maybe that's the reason why they're being called bigots online, and nothing to do with some miscellaneous skepticism over the efficacy of puberty blockers?
Children's well-being, it's often about their mental health. And I do think, the Department for Education have been looking at some of these issues, particularly where it relates to schools. We're still waiting for guidance to come forward. And what I hear a lot of the time, particularly from head teachers, is that they are trying to navigate this area. They're trying to do what's best by the children that they're responsible for.
Do you know what's best to do by the children? And we have literally incredibly large amounts of scientific evidence to show that this is the way to do it. Let them use the right pronouns. Let them wear the clothes they want to do. Let them identify as their chosen gender. That is literally what all the science says, right? If they change their mind later, that's absolutely fine. No one minds. The issue is that when they tell you that they want to use different pronouns and use a different name or present in a certain way, and you force them not to, that is severely detrimental to their mental health. Every single piece of scientific research will tell you that. Low-key calling for a genocide, yet horribly offended by being called a bigot. Well, exactly. I mean, it's obviously far closer to a genocide in the United States than it is over here, but the idea that they literally want to legislate us out of existence. And I know that might sound fucking catastrophizing, or me sounding the alarm bells over something that isn't, something that warrants such kind of alarmism, but that is at least kind of close to a cultural genocide, right? By essentially stripping our right to an existence. Like, for example, you gutting the Equality Act also guts a huge amounts of stuff that allows us to be able to live our lives as our chosen gender, right? Equality Act is where a lot of the provisions come from for gender recognition. In fact, a lot of TERFs want to get rid of the Gender Recognition Act altogether, so I literally cannot transition properly. No matter how many surgeries I get, they will literally tell me that I'm not allowed to transition at all. And that's the literally, and that is cultural genocide. Like, we literally have people like Helen Joyce saying that they need to reduce the number of trans people. That's Nazi rhetoric. It really is.
We want to make sure that children are properly supported. It's, it can be a difficult time, and the absence of that guidance does make it harder, I think, for schools and for school leaders to try and do what's right for children, making sure they've got the support that they need. I think that is really important.
And you've read the Cass report, both of you? You know what I'm talking about when I talk about the Cass review?
I do, and I feel very strongly about that children shouldn't be making these very important
decisions. I didn't, Scribby, let me check.
Without consent of their parents. I say that as a matter of...
This is literally Keir Starmer saying he wants to get rid of Gillick competence, right? So, for example, what he will do is put the decisions on whether minors can get abortions into the hands of their parents, right? Because abortion is healthcare. We all agree that abortion is healthcare. Transition-related therapy is also healthcare, right? They should be at the... And with abortion, it's an elective procedure. Yet to get through trans healthcare, you have to go through all the fucking, all the different bloody hoops you have to jump through with regards to psychological evaluation and doctor's appointments and all that kind of stuff that you have to go through, even to get like an appointment, let alone get onto actually getting into healthcare, right? So we agree that both an abortion and trans healthcare are both healthcare. Yet, they're still trying to say that parents should be allowed to stop their child from transitioning even at the recommendation of a medical professional, right? Yeah, that's exactly this is exactly the kind of rhetoric that can be used to stop children being able to get abortions without consent of their parents. It's a super fucking dangerous rhetoric. But, turfoids are very happy to lap this shit up and to sell their own rights down the river because it's not about women's rights, it's about being nasty to trans people.
Principle, I say as a parent, we all know what it's like, with teenage children, and I feel very strongly about this, that, this argument that children make decisions without consent of parents is one I just don't agree with at all.
Okay. And user Lost the Pot says, I'm not anti-trans and I believe that people should be able to live their lives in whichever gender they feel most comfortable. But I am pro-women's rights and I believe in sex segregation in certain circumstances, toilets, hospitals, changing rooms, sports, etc. How will you...
So you want to reverse the existing laws then? Because we literally, by the Equality Act, already have access to all these spaces. As a non-binary student teacher in my primary school, my brother teaches that. The admin are making them use masculine pronouns at work because kids can't understand that kind of thing. The kids probably understand it way more than the fucking senior management do. The only reason you haven't had to have your toe amputated is because I was able to organise my own doctor's appointments without parental consent. It's insane. Well, literally, that's why Gillick competence exists in the way that it does, right?
You uphold the right to have single-sex spaces, while simultaneously proposing legislation that will allow any male human to gain legal recognition as female through statutory declaration.
I'm a big believer in safe spaces. When we first did our mumsnet interview, I was Director of Public Prosecutions. I spent 5 years working hard on issues involving women who'd been subjected to, and girls subjected to, sexual violence, and feel very, very strongly that there should be safe spaces, as provided for under the Equalities Act passed by a Labour government. And let's be clear, for 99.9 whatever % of women, it's all a matter of biology, and we all understand that. Labour Party's championed women's rights for a very, very long time. If you look at all the changes in the law that have brought us greater equality, they've got the Labour Party stamped all over them, and that is not only our past, it's our future. Obviously, there are some people who don't identify with the gender they're born into. I'm not going to just disrespect them and pretend they don't exist, and that's why we need to modernise the legislation we've got.
It kind of sounds like you are, Keith. I'm not going to lie.
But that can be done respecting, safe spaces, etc., which are very, very important. That can be done at the same time as championing women's rights. And
the issue is that even if you do believe in this, by what function are you going to do? You're going to people have to produce their birth certificate to go to the fucking toilet, right? And even then, because of the Gender Recognition Act, we can get our birth certificates changed anyway. Once you go through an incredibly long process, at least in England, maybe not in Scotland. Once the legislation goes through to Gender Recognition Act reform, But even so, like, by what fucking method are you going to do this? You're going to fucking strip search everybody who enters a women's changing room or who enters a women's toilet, or a men's toilet or a men's changing room, right? Because this is the same. Both of these are single sex spaces, right? As far as these people are concerned, it doesn't fucking work. I think there's no practical way of doing any of this unless you want trans people to wear fucking pink triangles.
You need that now. If you look at, I mean, the government's crashed the economy, and guess what? Women are disproportionately impacted. So we need a Labour government coming in, not only to talk about what we have done, but to champion women's rights as we go forward.
So you believe that there's a way of making the legislation such that it can maintain safe spaces and give trans people what they need in terms of, recognising their gender?
Yeah, I do.
No, because we need access to those spaces as well. Like, simple.
And I think when it comes to sport, obviously that would be an area for sporting bodies. But I believe in integrity and fairness in sport, and that means that biological women need to be safeguarded in that environment.
Yes, because I'm sure Keith Starmer, former director of public prosecution, son of a toolmaker, is much more well educated on the subject of whether or not trans people should be in sports than the fucking International Olympics Committee that's let us compete for fucking decades, right? In fact, so much so that they even had a year where they tried to do sex testing, and so many women failed the sex testing because they came out as intersex that they then scrapped it for the very next year, right? It doesn't fucking work. And Keith is no authority on any of this shit. Neither are random shitters from Mumsnet.
Environment as well. We should have a proper, open, decent, respectful discussion about this.
Maybe we could if literally any single publication ever would have a trans person on ever. But no, they just platform people from Fair Cop and Transgender Trend and whatever fucking new anti-trans lobby group that's been sprung up with Heritage Foundation fund money. Like,
have to be struck. Of course they are.
Do you believe the Labour Party has allowed that discussion, though?
Well, I think that the Labour Party...
The Labour Party doesn't have any other fucking discussion because Rosie Duffield is the only person who's allowed to talk about it, right? The only pro-trans positions I ever fucking hear are from people from the SCG or Emily Thornberry at a push. But the problem is, I mean that's true, Lincoln. Like, obviously, but then again, the question also acknowledged that trans people exist, and he's already taken the position that he's willing to forego trans people's right to use certain facilities because of the framing of the question from Mumsnetters. Was his dad actually a toolmaker, or are you saying he produced a tool of a son? Well, both.
Has had that discussion, is having that discussion. That's a very, very good thing. People should take a step back. I actually think there's a huge amount of agreement if we were able to step back. If you read again just the introduction to that question, and I think most people agree with almost
the crazy bit is that I said there isn't agreement, because literally the question that you're saying is they would like to make sure that trans women can't use women's facilities and trans men can't use men's facilities. That is exactly what they're saying, and you are agreeing with them, and that is moving away from what we have right now. What we have right now is that if trans women can use women's facilities and trans men use men's facilities, that literally is how everything works right now. You are advocating for changing that from what we've literally had for decades, right? Not that I'll stop using women's facilities, because I won't. Like, those are facilities that I need to keep myself safe. But by taking the same framing as the question that's been posed by Mumsnet, he is explicitly endorsing segregating trans people away from cis people.
Word of it.
Thank you. So a question about women in politics, really. The Biology Stupid says that given that we've had the Conservative Party's third female Prime Minister until just a few days ago, is Labour in any position to criticise the Tories on female representation in Cabinet?
Well, look, let me be clear. It's a really good thing that we've had 3 female prime ministers.
I love that literally every single interview, Keith will say, "Let me be clear," and then we'll spend 2 minutes waffling on about fucking nothing.
It's a really good thing we've got our first British Asian Prime Minister, and that was something I was able to say from the dispatch box on Wednesday, and I meant it because it means a lot. And yes, the Labour Party needs a woman Prime Minister and needs a woman leader. I'll be first to say that. Luckily, what we've got at the moment, happily, I've got really powerful, strong women in the shadow cabinet in very, very important roles, and they would be in those roles going into, if we were to win election, running the country, whether that's Angela Rayner as Deputy, whether it's Bridget Phillipson as Shadow Education Secretary, whether it's Yvette Cooper at Shadow Home Office, and Rachel Reeves, of course, Shadow Chancellor. So we do have powerful women, but let me be clear: the Labour Party, needs to elect a woman leader. We need a woman Prime Minister.
Okay. And Sally McHarry says on the same subject, why do you think it is that the Labour Party's never had a female leader? Is the Labour Party?
To be fair, that was the one time I've heard him say, "Let me be clear," and then he has been reasonably clear in his response, right? But I think the actual response is, well, it doesn't really matter who the leader is, right? As long as they're competent. The issue is like, how much participation do we have in politics from women? And if you look at the Labour Party has consistently had the most women MPs in Parliament since records began, right? There's never been a party with more female MPs in Parliament than the Labour Party. Like, just because there's been some figurehead who's been part of a minority group for the Conservative Party, that doesn't change the fact that the vast majority of Tory MPs are all white men, like old white men at that.
Institutionally sexist.
No, I mean, if you look at the Labour Party,
the real solution, as you say, that I'm the dude, is that the real solution is just have single cubicle toilets, right, with walls, right, and then people use the individual cubicles. Why we need to have like a group fucking situation in toilets, I have no idea. I hate group situation in toilets. I wish every single toilet was just a single cubicle. I would much rather that. Like, the fact that it reminds me of like fucking Kemi Badenoch's campaign launch, where she took 2 single cubicle toilets and then like performatively stuck men's and women's signs on them that were completely needless, because just anybody can use them, because no one's sharing any space. I don't want to share space with people. I want to take a shit in peace, please.
Look at the Parliamentary Labour Party, just to take the obvious group in Parliament. We've got more women than men. Look at the shadow cabinet. We've got more women than men. Look at who we champion. We've done so much work on equality. And if the single most important issue at the moment, the economy, impacting women more than others, and this government has just crashed the economy. So if you want to look for which is a party that's sort of bearing down on women and actually holding them back, it's the government, because almost everything that they do, everything that they mess up, and they've absolutely damaged the economy, impacts women disproportionately. So that's amongst the very many reasons that we need to get rid of them and usher in a Labour government.
Okay. Just one on Brexit. Always is never going to go away. New York Christmas says, if as Prime Minister...
Yeah, why, if he thought Labour should have a female leader, why did he stand against Long Bailey and also Nandy and Thornbury, but he did steal the positions from Long Bailey? Thatcher, May and Truss, Holy Trinity of Shite, true. That's what they're doing in the unisex toilets, uni and the uni. Yes, it's just the best way of doing shit. I mean, that's how like, whenever I've gone abroad, that's what happens. They just have single cubicle toilets. Amusingly, with the men's and women's labels on them. Just the women's toilets have sanitary facilities. That's it. That's the difference. Just put sanitary facilities in all the fucking toilets, and then everyone can use everything.
There was overwhelming evidence from recognised experts that Brexit had caused significant damage to the UK economy. Would you consider re-entering the customs union and the single market?
I think that we've got to make Brexit work. And I think all that we've got at the moment is a government
I'm so tired of hearing that phrase.
Got us out of the EU with a deal that isn't working. And we've got to make Brexit work. That does not involve going back into the EU, does not involve going to the customs union or the single market, but it does mean removing the barriers that are there to those that want to trade. It does mean sorting out the protocol in Northern Ireland. We had a big Labour Creatives launch last night, which was fantastic.
I'm incredibly frustrated about this desire to change the Northern Ireland Protocol. The only people who don't like Northern Ireland Protocol are the DUP, because it shows that Northern Ireland is better off in Brexit, which for 2 reasons. Because the DUP want Brexit to work, so they don't like people being in Northern Ireland being shown that having access to the single market is better. And B, they also don't want people in Northern Ireland to want to then reunite with the Republic of Ireland on the basis of wanting to stay in the European Union. That's why the Northern Ireland Protocol has to go for just essentially to satiate the DUP. As far as the actual functionality of the Northern Ireland Protocol, it's working fine. There's no problems. It's all fucking gravy. There's no real issues with the Northern Ireland Protocol as far as I'm concerned. But the fact that he's saying, we need to make Brexit work by removing the barriers and sorting out the Northern Ireland Protocol, that's literally what Liz Truss was saying fucking 3 months ago. It's no different, right? And fundamentally, the failures with Brexit are down to leaving the single market on the customs union. Or you could fucking have an EFTA agreement. His Brexit position is so fucking stupid. When you transition, you're glad to never have to see a fucking urinal again. Oh my god, yes. Oh my god, I hate urinals so much. To be fair, even pre-transition, I never used urinals.
The creative sector, they want help, particularly travelling across borders in relation to their sector, which is absolutely huge. All of those things need to be fixed, but that doesn't involve going back into the EU. It does involve making Brexit work.
Okay.
Exactly, it's just fucking platitudes. I need to do the good things and not the bad things and make things work. How? How are you going to do that? Give us detailed answers. He doesn't fucking know.
So I was pleased to see the clean energy plans at the party conference, but what does Labour plan to do about the climate impacts we're already facing and which will get worse in the future? Will you be willing to strengthen the Climate Change Act of 2008 to make sure that resilience to climate impacts is not just assessed, but actually done and properly financed?
Yes, we absolutely need to move forward on this. And what we did at our conference was to set out what we call our Green Prosperity Plan, which is...
By the way, if you're enjoying the content, either on YouTube or Twitch, you can subscribe for $3.99. To become a member, to become a subscriber on Twitch, to get access to my excellent emotes, including the Keith emote, which I'm sure someone is hopefully going to be dropping in chat right now to celebrate the fact that we have the son of the toolmaker on the screen right now. You can also join, become a member on YouTube, and that's only 99p, which you can help support the channel. And that also gets you access to emotes for a quarter of the price on Twitch. Either is welcomed, neither is expected.
A plan that does involve clean power by 2030, but that's a massive undertaking. I think it can be done.
So I don't necessarily disagree with the idea. Like having like communal unisex toilets, I can see the problems, and there have been problems, right? There's evidence showing that there are problems with communal unisex toilets, right? I'm not an advocate of communal unisex toilets. What I think there should be is individual cubicles, and if not, then 3 separate sets of toilets where you have one unisex and then segregated toilets as well. Have access to all of these things. I think this is the best solution moving forward.
Said, Keir, it's difficult. I said, I know it's difficult, but is it possible to do it? And the answer is yes, with a government that has the intent to do it. So clean power by 2030. GB Energy, publicly owned company, driving this forward towards renewables. Renewables are 9 times cheaper than oil and gas. And our plan does, for the first time, a political party has been able to put forward a plan for the future that does 4 things. Firstly, it'll bring our bills down. And talking to the mums in particular downstairs who are struggling with their energy bills, they want to hear how those energy bills are going down. Second thing it does is to give us security so that we're not exposed to the international market in the same way, with Putin being able to, as I say, put his foot on our throats. Thirdly, huge generational change in relation to the jobs of the future. And fourthly, deals with climate change. So we've got this very, very powerful plan to go. It's the most bold plan that anybody's put on there, and it will put us ahead of many of our partners across the world. So the sooner we can get going on that, the better, because we've had years and years of delay. If you look at this government's failure, it's everywhere to be seen. They've not really tackled this. They've not gone for onshore wind. Insulating people's homes is hugely important. We were doing that a bit until Cameron said, cut the green crap. Then it all dropped down. And now people are still living in homes where they're paying energy bills. A lot of that's being lost. Shouldn't have been the case. We intend to do something about it.
Okay,
I mean, that's a good answer. I will give Keith that he's given a singular good answer in the last 22 minutes and 32 seconds.
So a question from I Love Luca. And this is a question.
Luca must be a child or a pet.
Yeah, well, who knows? If Bridget was sitting here in your position as prospective leader of the country, she would definitely get asked this question. So she says, I'm asking this because I'm certain if you're a woman, he would be asked this question. Yet I can't recall having seen him be asked it. How do you balance the demands of your incredibly demanding job with those of having a young family? Do you actually get to see your kids? And does your wife end up picking up the strain? And if so, does she mind?
Well, the first thing is I should be asked that question. And quite right too. I'm very happy to
God, I
answer.
hate this fucking performative liberal feminism shit. Like, their arrangement clearly works, right? I'm sure that his wife is very happy doing the housework when he's bringing home fucking 6 figures every year. I'm sure she's fine. I'm sure she's absolutely fine.
I do try to get the balance.
The issue isn't the idea that that families might segregate the certain different amounts of whether it might be work or childcare between people based upon what they're doing, right? Keir is obviously very busy being the leader of the opposition. He probably doesn't have much time to see his kids, and his wife probably does a lot of the housework and a lot of the child rearing, right? But that's her choice and that's his choice, right? The issue isn't that someone's doing this. The issue is that the societal prescription is that the women should always be doing this. That's what feminists should disagree with, right? This again, say, oh well, the issue isn't the fact that Keir's been asked the question. It's the fact that women keep getting asked the question. No one should ask the fucking question. It's completely fucking irrelevant. If it works for them, it works for them. That's their choice.
That's right. It is difficult because it's a busy job, but it is about choices. And I make the choice to give up time for my children. I don't want in 10 years' time to do what so many men do, which is to say, oh, I wish I'd spent more time with my children. I really regret it. So, for example, just to give an example, I've got a hard stop in my diary at 6 o'clock on a Friday, unless it's exceptional. I will be going home. I will be with my wife. I will be with our kids. Equally, at the weekend, our kids do sport and all the usual things, and I try to take them to that. And that's
True, Iron Mage.
It's no good sort of not doing that. You've got to carve out that time. Now, true it is on a Friday, we argue about what takeaway we might get, and everyone is trying to get the iPads off the kids. So, but I've got rules about this. I'm not going to be someone who in 10 years just says, I wish I hadn't done that. I wish I'd spent more time with my kids. I love being with my kids. It's fantastic. Right. And it's really good for me as well, because they have no regard for the fact that I'm leader of the Labour Party. I walk through that front door and I'm dad, I'm their property, and that's absolutely right. So, they make fun of what I do for a living, which is good.
Yes. And it will be that way forever, I think.
But my daughter, I'll just give you one small example because that was absolutely brilliant. My daughter said to me, this was a couple of years ago now, she said, what are you doing tonight? I said, I'm doing a fundraising dinner. I said, what's that? So it's a dinner where people pay to come and hear somebody speak. She said, oh, well, who's speaking? I said, well, I am. She said, why would anyone pay to hear you speak? So it's a really good leveller.
Yeah, very good. And the forums of Mumsnet are littered with sort of women who are slightly disappointed in their husbands and how much they're doing their equal share. And clearly, it must be very hard in your position. Have you got some sort of bargain where you say, I'll give me 10 years at this and I'll pick up the slack later?
No, we try to do as much as we can together now. Again, I genuinely think it's a mistake to sort of park it. In 10 years, I mean, our boy is 14 now, our little girl's 11.
Sort of domestic duties, putting the bins out.
Yeah, I put the bins out.
They always put the bins out. The bins out is what they do.
I mean, sometimes we have photographers outside.
Iron Mage, can you jump into Katie Montgomery's chat and tell her to turn on live redirects?
Yeah.
Thank you for being my Hermes.
Okay, it wouldn't be a Mumsnet interview really if we didn't ask your favourite biscuit. So Bridget, I'm going to kick off with you. What's your favourite biscuit and why?
Can I be honest? I don't actually like biscuits, but if I had to choose, I'd probably choose something with chocolate
Something
on.
with chocolate. Why don't you like biscuits?
I prefer sweets.
Okay.
I've got a really sweet tooth, but Haribo every day of the week.
Great.
Chocolate digestive. And I think if you check your records, I think that's what I said
that.
that. Have you asked me every time I've done it? I think you have.
I think we do. We always do. Okay,
but here and you've actually got them for us.
Yeah, we did know that. We
look
back. We look back. Brilliant. Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed it.
Fantastic.
Thanks for the time.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
I really fucking hate Keith, and also hate Mumsnet, so that was fun. I enjoyed that.